Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmadu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So thank you, Brother Salman, for this kind introduction. It's not. But anyhow, so this is developing a just and balanced society index on the basis of Maqasid Al-Sharia. So can I change this screen from my side, or no? It's not possible.
It's not possible from your side.
Okay.
When
Okay.
you say, I'll inshallah.
Okay. So the next one. So next. So this is basically work in progress, as Brother Salman already mentioned that basically this is a concept presentation. Could be developed into a major project, need a multidisciplinary approach and team. So that is the basic, and why it happened, I think we will discuss in this when we discuss the other slides also. Next one. So the categorization of people, periods, and places, it is very common in the knowledge. If you start from the Quran, from the Quran Majid, we saw that different era, the Qawme Samud, Qawme Ad, Qawme Nuh, all this Aqwam, all or maybe Sabiqunul Awwalun, Ashabul Yameen, Ashabul Shamal, and several other examples we can say that the categorization of people, period, and places, it is happening. These are basically, we say, the human construct label manifestation of the power structure. Afterward, we saw that, for example, Darul Islam and Darul Arab. It was constructed during when the Muslims were almost ruling the world or the lot of area of the world. So they made this. This is Darul Salam and this is Darul Harb. Mawraul Nahar and Near Eastern. So these are also terminology used. Then Stone Ages, medieval period, Renaissance, global village, digital world. These are the terminology today we have been seeing it, reading it about first word, second word, third word, developing word, developed word. So all these terminology have been discussed before also in social sciences or when we are discussing about the history. Very interestingly, I have, I think one book is very good, Destiny Disrupted, History of the World Through Islamic Eyes. Maybe you have discussed already in this group. It's written by Tamim Ansari. It's an Afghani-American scholar. But it was translated in Urdu by Zaki Kermani Saab. I think he's from in Aligarh University. Kafla Kyun Luta, something, Kafla, I think he translated the whole book. In that book, he also mentioned that how the Western world distributed the all previous 5,000 years, and Islamic world, how they, in Islamic scholars, how they will explain that. For example, the Western world will distribute the world history, birth of civilization, classic age, the dark ages, when the rise of Christianity and even Islam, so they put it dark ages. Rebirth, like in 17th, 18th century, 19th century, Renaissance, Reformation, Enlightenment, when the science and exploration, revolutions, democratic, industrial, technological, rise of nation state, the struggle for empire, World Wars I and II, and then the Cold War, and now the triumph of democratic capitalism, and the Fukuyama wrote this book of End of History or something. But when we see that how the Muslim will describe that ancient time, the birth of Islam, the Caliphate, quest for universal unity, fragmentation, age of the Sultanate, catastrophic crusades and Mongol, when there were a lot of Khana Jangi or civil wars happened in Muslim. Rebirth, the three empire era, that the 17th century, when the three Muslims empire were there, means Ottoman, the Mughal, and Safi in Iran. So the major three empires are there. But then permutation of East by West, West started to occupy the East, reform movements, the triumph of the secular modernist, and now the Islamic reaction after that. So in the way this type of categorization always happen. Ibn Khaldun is very interestingly in his Muqaddimah, He mentioned that the people who lives in cold areas or urban areas, they are coward. They are very much shameless people, very against them. And I remember when I came to here, University of Connecticut, so when one of the American professors, that discussion happened, that those people who living in Africa and Latin America, so near, they are living in hot weather, they are very lazy. They are always living lazy and they are maghloob, always maghloob. They are occupied by others. Ibn Khaldun think other way around, that the hot people living in the hot area, they will be ghalib, they will be hakim. And people living in cold area and urban area, they are very much shameless people, coward people. Post-World War II trend of reports and indexes of the countries of the world. So after post-World War II, one trend started from the West that they will start publishing or maintaining reports, indexes of the countries of the world. Next. So the annual reports and indexes, one area is where the governments or international organizations. For example, World Bank is publishing World Development Report, then UN Human Development Reports, worldwide regions, as a Sustainable Development Goals report by the UN. The US State Department used to publish, still they are publishing country report on human rights practices, annual report means, country reports on terrorism, international religious freedom report, trafficking in person report. And very funny thing is that China started publishing another report on human rights record in the US. So China will focus on Harlem area where a lot of homeless people, they are looking for their food in the garbage area or something like that. The black area where the windows are smashed and no development happen. So China will publish this type of reports and US publish the other way around. Next. And then there are private institutions also started. For example, human development in South Asia and human governance, freedom in the world by the Freedom House, freedom of the press by the Freedom House, failed state index by foreign policy and the Fund for Peace, annual reports of the Amnesty International, corruption perception index by the Transparency International. Next. Then International Happiness Index, International Wealth Index, Inequality Report by Oxfam International, Poverty Index by Oxford University, and Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf, I think only one time, he also published a report, a Sharia compliance report by Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf, and he presented in New York and Triple IT here. Next. So what is the purpose of these reports and indexes? Actually, basically in presenting a giant mirror where each country may see its own development or lack of it. That was the one purpose. A global matrix where each country may see its place and position, that in the global index and global development and global what is happening, where we stand as a country or society, where we stand. However, the underlying assumption is, is that the stated criterion of progress on the given topic is a universally accepted goal and the world community should struggle to achieve it. So that was West presented that report that this is the giant mirror, this is the global matrix, and now the country should develop according to this matrix. They should develop their own society, their own country. So take for that is China report on the US human rights records. So China is, as I mentioned before. Next. But the critical issue with the reports and indexes is that, for example, per capita income to human development evolving but limited focus of the human development. And they corrected that. The per capita income does not show the human development. Then they started human development indexes also. Like wherever they are publishing, they are selecting some areas and some variable of progress. Agenda setting to fulfill Cold War and post-Cold War need of the Western world. So one, for example, they published that. Recently, I was looking at the UN gender equality report. So they will only focus that whether men and women or the third the other those who does not select any sex, So their development, their rights are there. They don't concentrate or focus on family development or family progress. No, that was not the issue, because then it become the moral issue, then become the value issue. No, only focusing on their set agenda. Uh, where they have progress, for example, the roads and other relations, other development things, they will be have more type of thing. Post Cold War and other Cold War period also, that those countries which are with very much with the Soviet Union at that time, or the West, they will consider that they are more democracy. Democracy is the ideal thing. So wherever we are at that place, they will show that. And also, when the Congress authorized some reports, for example, this international religious freedom and the trafficking and all other, they will be exclude USA in the annual indexes. So they will say that any US government or any US government agency cannot publish anything report on the US, but they can include all over the world. They will be including that in their report, but not their own country. If there's something happening in their own country, they will not present in that report. For example, this religious freedom. Even very interestingly, I participated in a couple of meetings, State Department meeting. They will be publishing about India, Pakistan, all other Muslim countries, non-Muslim countries. But on Israel and America, they will not publish that. Or Israel, they will say, no, this is not religious, this is the ethnic type thing. So it is not the scope of that report. And if America something is happening, they will not include that, because Congress has barred the U.S. Department of State to publish anything on America. So these are some issues that they are very selective, their agendas and their areas, and they are not presenting the whole human endeavor for development, and US always be excluded from USA reports. So that type of issues are still there with these all annual reports and indexes. Next. So here we can see that what is the prophetic mission to guide man to achieve justice. That is the prophetic mission. I think Surah Al-Hadid, that ayah that where it said, we sent our messenger with clear signs and sent down with them the book and the balance, so that men may conduct themselves with justice. The Surah Al-Hadid. And injustice lead ultimately to destruction. That is in Surah Taha. So while the Quran predicts that destruction to be the consequences of injustice, the Prophet, peace and blessing of God be upon him, predicts darkness to be the consequences. So darkness and destruction are the same, almost the same thing. That is, if their justice is not there, so the people will feel when the injustice is there, balance is not there, so there will be corruption, there will be darkness, there will be destruction. That is the Quranic mission and prophetic mission. Next. So emphasis is on justice has been reflected in the writings of all Muslim scholars throughout history. For example, Ibn Taymiyyah died in 1328, wrote that injustice is absolutely not permissible, irrespective of whether it is to a Muslim or a non-Muslim or even to an unjust person. Ibn Khaldun died in 1406, also forcefully stated that it is not possible for a country to develop without justice. The Western scholars and the American founding father also emphasize this dimension, especially the importance of non-economic factors for the human development. And in the founding father of the US, in the Constitution, they have written this is incomplete union and we should strive for justice. Next. So my humble suggestion is that we need for a new index to present the human endeavor in one global perspective. There are a number of indicators that show the extent to which justice prevails in a given society. One of these is whether all the people in it, irrespective of their race, religion, language, color, gender, or wealth, are able to meet their basic needs and to have access to all the utilities that are needed to make life comfortable. That is a criteria I'm presenting that. A more comprehensive index would include a number of other indicators like family integrity, social harmony, equitable distribution of income and wealth, and mental peace. The purpose of the new index would be to examine if the human development is just and balanced. So that is should be the criteria and that should be presented. Next. So the 7-point Maqasid Al-Sharia provide us a comprehensive scheme to develop an index to compare the human societies on their progress to achieve a just and balanced status. The new index will be called as Just and Balanced Society Index. Before developing into it, let's examine some examples of the unjust and unbalanced human development. Next. This is an old picture. I think we can find some newer one also. Disparity at global level. This is unjust world order. The richest 85 people in the world have as much wealth as the poorest 3.5 billion. This is an old, means I think data, but I think new one will show more disparity, more unjust world if we examine some latest side. The next. So, for example, 20% of the world population own 80% of the world's resources, while 80% own only 20% of the world resources. Digital divide, you all know that. There's some data, the OIC 57 Muslim countries have at least 21% of the world population. However, their share of PPP adjusted GDP is only 8%, 3.9 trillion of $48.5 trillion. There may be the latest data could be different, but that is the disparity at the global level. Next. So here we can examine some disparity in, I have one or two examples, USA and in India. Blacks are 13% of the US population of more than 300 million, right now 330 or 332 million. Blacks comparing whites on various socioeconomic variables. This still it's an old data, but you can see that. Like on any variable, life expectancy of a child, infant mortality, families below the poverty line, unemployment adults, unemployment teens, family median income, lawyers, judges, professor, physician, engineer. So we see that white situation is much better than the black situation. So black are not even 13% of representation in the population. All other major of the area, they are 5.1%, 6.1%, 5.6, 3.5. So they are shorter, they are lesser than the white people over there. So still that percentage, whatever there is, there are reasons I understand, but their share is not as they have 13%. Same thing in the representation, political representation. That data we can also produce. Next. The same in Muslim condition in India. Maybe this is still, it could be revised. Muslims are almost 14% of the Indian population of 1.13 or 1.4 billion. However, they are 4% among the university graduates, 3% among the professional, 6% among the Indian bureaucracy, and 7% among the electoral politics. According to the such a report, Indian Muslims are facing lower levels of living and human development conditions compared to other social groups, including Dalits and what they call Advocacy. What is the Sahih pronunciation? Salman bhai?
Adivasi.
Adivasi, yeah. Next. But before that, that is an interesting thing also. We saw the India situation. But recently, World Bank report of equality in the nation, I think the very recent report, they are saying India ranks as the world's 4th most equal society, say World Bank report. India has emerged as the world's 4th most equal society with a Gini index of 25.5, outpacing all G7 and G20 countries. According to the World Bank, this remarkable progress reflects significant poverty reduction and targeted government welfare schemes as India balanced rapid economic growth with social equity. Its model offered lesson for the world. So that is a new report. So we should think about also. There's a very long report. I think you can see that India is number 4 in the world in the equity level. That's very, there are, Maqasid Al-Sharia is a full-fledged another subject, but I will very quickly explain that there are 6 stages of development of Maqasid Al-Sharia. That is basically, before that, 7th to 9th century, speculating a certain underlying purpose, aim, or intent of it. But they use the word illat. any hukm, any hukm of the Quran and any order of that there should be a reason, there should be an illat of that. First they used to call that one. And then in the 10th century, the classification of purpose of the criminal punishment in Islam, so that was also developed. That what is the purpose of this punishment? Then in next 2 to 3 century, theory of level of necessity, purpose of the Islamic law is the protection for people's faith, soul, minds, private parts, and money. Then 5 major Maqasid Al-Sharia was developed as the preservation of faith, soul, mind, offspring, and wealth. Al-Ghazali, Imam Shatibi, they revolutionized this concept, declaring the fundamentals of law and instead of wisdom behind the ruling, illat for this hook, the base for the ruling. So that is the basis for any ruling in Islam. In 20th century, more refinement happened, modernization and additions of justice and freedom as maqasid were also included in Ibn Ashur. And late 20th century, 21st century, more refinement and application, universal application, it is happening. Next. So there is a 7-point Maqasid Sharia, like as I mentioned, preservation of religion or religiosity, preservation of life, preservation of family, preservation of intellect, preservation of wealth, preservation of justice, preservation of liberty or freedom. Next. So we can develop that index, a new question, new survey, and new information are needed. For example, question about the role of religion and belief in God, question about the falah and honor of each human being, question about family, children, marriage, divorce, question about economic disparity, question about adl among the various ethno-religious groups and their level of achievement in a society. For example, any group, Muslims in India or in blacks in or Spanish in America. So what is their percentage in the population? So what is the percentage of the reward of the society? For example, we saw some results about political representation, education, about judges, lawyers, but also looking at what is their representation or their percentage in the jail. For example, this black and Spanish, they are 29% of the American population. But in the jail, 2.2 million people in the jail in America, their representation is almost 59%. So we can see that whether this is a just society or not just society, about their representation in the reward system, their representation in the jail and all other like punishment type thing. Question about the liberty and freedom of various individual rights. Yes, next. So this is the basic concept, and I just I started working on, but then in between I got the other responsibility. I could not focus on that. I love to focus on that. So what is the next stage? Preparing JABSI for US, India, and Malaysia as a pilot project. Why these 3 countries? Because there is a sharp ethno-religious divide. In America, black and Spanish, they are 13% and 17 and 16%, 17%. In India, Muslims are 14%, and there's a Hindu majority, but there are scheduled caste and other groups. In Malaysia, Muslims are in majority, but Chinese are 23, 24%, and Indian they are around 7%. So it is looked as a pilot project to develop that type of index to focus on these 3 countries. Then identifying a team of scholars, and we need a multiple field scholars. I discussed with some of the scholars in Pakistan and in America and also in India, and they are ready to work on these pilot project. Then selecting a pertinent variables to collect, analyze, and score public, private, and survey data. So we need government data, we need private data, and also a lot of surveys are happening. Publishing the initial report of the Just and Balanced Society Index for the 3 countries in 2026, inshallah. So that is the next stage. I need more any question, any help. If we'll see that we love to do that, inshallah. So that is some brief presentation about the whole thing. So Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.